paradrama tales.
What's your I came looking for? Copper but found gold. Moment, my mom. Sold me and my little brother for just $50. Years later, she tracked me down with one chilling demand. You owe me. That moment took me right back to being 12, standing outside with nowhere to go, and realizing love for her always had a price. I was 9 years old when I first carried my mother home. That evening still plays vividly in my memory, etched in my mind, like a scene from an old movie. It was getting dark, the streetlights had just flickered to life, and there she was, sprawled on the cracked pavement near our apartment, completely passed out. She had gone too far again, and it wasn't the first time, but it was the first time I knew it was my responsibility to pick her up to be the adult, even though I was barely big enough to hold her upright. I remember how heavy she felt her weight pulling down on my small frame as I struggled to lift her onto my back. Her arms hung limply over my shoulders, her breath stale with alcohol, murmuring incoherent words into my ear. I stumbled forward with every step, each movement feeling as if it might be my last before collapsing. But I couldn't afford to fall, not just yet, not when I knew my younger brother Louis was waiting anxiously at home, his innocent eyes already far too familiar with disappointment. As I shuffled toward our building, neighbors glanced from their windows' curtains flickering shut when they saw us coming. Shame burned my cheeks, my heart racing not from exhaustion, but from embarrassment. I wished desperately that one of them would offer to help even just once, but they never did. To them, we were just another troubled family to gossip about another tragic story they whispered behind closed doors. When I finally reached our doorstep, my legs felt like jelly. I nudged open the door, my heart sinking, as Louis appeared, his wide eyes fearful and brimming with tears. His little voice trembled when he asked, "Is Mommy dead?" The question hung heavy in the air, gripping my chest tighter than my mother's arms ever had. I forced a gentle smile, the lie already forming easily on my lips. "No, Lou, she's just tired. She got too much fresh air." He seemed to believe me, or maybe he just desperately wanted to. I laid our mother carefully on the old couch, her hair falling messily across her face, the shadows from our single dim lamp masking her pain and mine. Louis curled up next to me, clutching my arm tightly, and I told him stories to distract him, shaping imaginary worlds from the shadows cast upon our wall. That night, lying awake and listening to my mother's ragged breathing, I realized something important. I wasn't just a child anymore. I had become something else entirely, a protector, a caregiver, a guardian. Childhood ended that day, and from then on, Louis would always come first. I was 12 when I bought my first white t-shirt from Goodwill. It cost me $2 money I'd earned myself from babysitting the neighbor's twin toddlers every weekend. It wasn't fancy, just clean and simple, but to me, it felt like the world. It was the first thing I'd ever owned that wasn't handed down, pulled from a lost and found bin, or donated out of pity. I walked home that day feeling proud, not because of how it looked, but because of what it meant. I had earned something. I had done something for myself. The second I stepped through the door, my mom's eyes locked onto the shirt like a laser. She was sitting on the torn couch, a half-empty bottle at her feet. Her mouth curled before I even said a word. "Where'd you get that?" she hissed. I told her I bought it with my own money. That's when she stood up and slapped me so hard my head jerked sideways. My smile vanished. She kept hitting one slap after another until I dropped to the floor. "I can barely afford to buy beer," she screamed, "and you come prancing in here like you're better than me." I didn't cry. I just looked at her, stunned, clutching my cheek. I had saved for weeks to buy that shirt. It wasn't about pride, it was about normalcy. And just like that, she tore it from me, not the fabric, but the meaning behind it. Then she spat out the final blow: "Get the fickies out of my house. No son of mine is going to be a show-off." I froze. Was she serious? But her face said it all. My first thought wasn't about myself. It was Louis. He was still at school. I needed to leave before he got home. I didn't want him to see her like this again. I didn't want him to see me like this, small, beaten down, unwanted. So I went upstairs, grabbed my backpack, and packed what little I had. A few shirts, some socks, a book I used to read to Louis. Everything fit into one bag. I turned to look back at her, half hoping she'd say anything. A change of heart, a crumb of guilt. But she just lit a cigarette and turned away. So I walked out. Not just of the house, but of childhood, of illusion of hope, that maybe one day she'd love me the way a mother should. That night, I wandered the streets with my backpack and nothing else, not even a plan. I didn't know where I was going. I just walked. My feet took me past the shuttered stores, the flickering street lamps, and finally to the old playground where Louie and I used to play. It was nearly 11 p.m., and the air had that cold bite of loneliness that only kids without homes know. I sat on the swing, the rusted chains groaning with every gentle rock, and stared up at the stars, wondering if anyone was even looking down. Then I heard footsteps. At first I tensed, thinking it might be trouble, but the voice that followed was soft, gentle even. "Why aren't you home, sweetheart?" It was an older woman, her eyes crinkled at the corners, like someone who'd smiled through both joy and pain. She didn't lecture me. She didn't pity me. She just sat next to me on the swing like we were old friends. I didn't say much, didn't have to. Somehow, she understood. When I finally gave her our address, it wasn't because I trusted easily. It was because for the first time in forever, I wanted someone to know where I came from, even if I didn't want to go back. To my surprise, she drove me home. When we got to the front door, Louis opened it. His face lit up like the 4th of July when he saw me. "You're back," he beamed, running toward me. The woman turned to me and asked softly, "Is this your brother?" I nodded. That night, I didn't sleep in my old bed. I curled up under Louis's, hidden from our mom, who was passed out upstairs. In the middle of the night, I woke to find his tiny arms wrapped around my neck, his head resting on my chest. His little body breathed slow and steady, and for that brief moment, everything felt safe. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't last. And I was right. The next morning came with a knock on the door. The same woman from the park stood there this time, with a police officer beside her. My mom barely had time to scream before she was in handcuffs. Louis and I were swept into an emergency foster home that very day. And just like that, everything changed. The social worker told us it would be temporary, just a place to sleep, eat, and stay safe. But the foster family who took us in saw something else in Louis. They adored him instantly. He was sweet, polite, good at school, and he had this quiet charm that made people want to protect him. Me, I was the extra baggage. I was older, more guarded. I was the one who asked questions and double-checked everything. They didn't dislike me, but I could tell I wasn't part of the plan. Still, I didn't care. Because Louis, he was thriving. For the first time in his life, he had toys that weren't broken clothes, that didn't smell like cigarettes, and a warm meal every night. That was enough for me. Then one day they sat us down. Louis had told them firmly that he wouldn't stay unless I stayed too. So they made it official. They wanted to adopt both of us. And just like that, the conversation shifted from temporary to permanent. But we couldn't finalize anything without her signature, our mom. I remember the day vividly. The social worker placed the documents in front of her papers that would terminate her parental rights forever. She didn't even read them. She just asked, "What's in it for me?" The foster parents looked at each other, hesitated, then one of them pulled a $50 bill from their wallet. Just one bill, one meal at a diner, one tank of gas. That's all it took. She snatched it like it was a prize and scribbled her name. No tears, no hesitation, no looking back. I sat in the corner of that room, too stunned to move. That's when it hit me. She didn't lose us. She sold us. $50. That was the price of being freed from motherhood, and the cost of me losing any lingering illusion that somewhere inside her there was a mother who cared. As we walked out of that office, Louis held my hand tightly, smiling, as if something good had just happened. And maybe for him it had. He'd gained a future. But for me, that signature didn't feel like freedom. It felt like abandonment stamped in ink. I was 17 when she came back. It was a warm spring afternoon, and school had just let out. I was walking toward the bus stop when I saw her leaning against a fence like she belonged there. Same eyes, same smirk, but older now, more weathered, more calculated. She stepped forward, arms crossed, like she was doing me a favor by showing up. "You owe me," she said, voice steady, like she believed it. As if the years she drank through, the beatings, the abandonment, could all be washed away by a single sentence. I didn't even flinch. I told her to go to hell and kept walking. I wasn't that kid anymore. But she wasn't here for me. That night, Louis came home from soccer practice and brought a guest. Her. She stood there in our living room like she owned it, sipping the lemonade our foster mom always made for us, smiling like she'd never missed a birthday, never raised a hand, never taken a bribe to give us away. Louis looked at me with those wide, hopeful eyes, the same ones that used to stare up at me when he had nightmares. the same ones that used to search my face for answers. She's different now, he said. She's been sober for 3 months. She just wants to talk. I couldn't breathe. The world felt upside down. Our mother, the same woman who once told me I'd ruined her life because I had the nerve to buy a Goodwill t-shirt, was back. And somehow, she'd convinced Louis that she deserved a second chance. I asked to speak with him in private, but she interrupted. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of me. She said, her tone sugar-sweet, but laced with control. I wanted to scream, but instead, I did what I'd always done. I protected Louis. I smiled. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and I said she could stay for dinner. It was the only way to keep him calm, to keep the peace. As I cooked, I watched them. She played the role while laughing at his stories, nodding at his trophies, asking about school. But it wasn't curiosity. It was strategy. She was gathering intel. Then came the questions. Do your foster parents both work? What kind of car do they drive? How big is the house? Louis answered without hesitation. And I knew right then she wasn't here to be a mother. She was here to take everything. The first thing that went missing was a phone charger. Then it was some spare change. Small things easy to overlook, easy to misplace. But when our foster mom's earrings disappeared, and later our foster dad's watch suspicion started to creep in. And that's when the accusations began. One afternoon, Patricia, our foster mom, pulled me aside. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes were searching. She held up her missing earrings, the ones I knew she kept locked away in her vanity drawer. I found these in your backpack, she said quietly. I froze. My heart dropped to the floor. I hadn't put them there. I wouldn't. But how could I prove a negative? I denied it, of course. I swore I had no idea how they ended up there. But I saw the shift in her expression. The trust that had taken years to build was crumbling in seconds. And it didn't stop. Over the next few days, more items showed up in my room, hidden beneath clothes wedged into drawers. Each time I denied it. Each time I felt the distance growing, not just from our foster parents, but from Louis. He started looking at me differently, less like a brother, more like a stranger. When I brought up our mother, he got defensive, said I was jealous, that I didn't want her to have a relationship with him because I was still bitter. Bitter. He had no idea what bitterness really looked like, but she did, and she was using it like a weapon. Then came the night I caught her. I heard her in the backyard talking on the phone. Her voice was slurred, the same ugly drawl I remembered from childhood. But the words were razor sharp. She was bragging about how easy it was to manipulate Louis, how the foster family had money, how she was planting things to frame me. I grabbed my phone, hit record. My hands were shaking, but she saw me. Before I could back away, she burst through the door, grabbed my phone, and smashed it against the wall. Then she leaned in, breath thick with alcohol, and hissed in my ear, "Try that again, and I'll tell them you attacked me. I'll show them the scratches." They're already halfway convinced. That's when I saw them, thin red marks across her arms. Self-inflicted. The trap was set, and I was completely terrifyingly alone. It all came to a head at Louis' championship soccer game. We'd been walking on eggshells for weeks, her visits increasing, her manipulation tightening like a noose. My reputation at school was already damaged from the theft rumors, and Louis was barely speaking to me. Our foster parents tried their best to keep things together, but the cracks were showing. Still, we all showed up to support Louis that day. Patricia had packed sandwiches, Robert wore his lucky cap, and I even made a banner that said, "Go number 9, just like when he was a kid drawing soccer balls in his notebooks." Then I saw her. She showed up halfway through the first half, weaving slightly as she walked, pretending everything was fine. But I could tell she'd been drinking. The gloss in her eyes, the forced laugh that echoed too loud over the field. She was spiraling again. At halftime, I stepped away to grab water. That's when she found me right by the concession stand. "You're ruining everything," she hissed. He was starting to love me again. "Why do you have to poison him against me?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Because I remember. And now, so does he." She tried to hush me, waving her hands like I was the one creating a scene, but I was done staying quiet. I raised my voice, loud enough for the families nearby to hear. I told her I knew she'd been planting the stolen items, that I'd caught her on tape before she smashed my phone, that she was manipulating Louis to get to our foster parents' money. She snapped. She lunged at me, screaming profanity, her fist hitting my jaw so hard I stumbled back. Parents rushed in to pull her off, and the field turned into chaos. That's when Lewis saw it. He stood just yards away watching the woman he'd defended for months shriek like a wild animal, her mascara running her rage spilling out for all to see. She reached out to him, sobbing, pleading. "We're family, baby. Come with me." They don't understand our love. Louis didn't move. For the first time in months, he stepped away from her, and toward me. A counselor in the crowd who'd been watching for weeks stepped between them. She called the police. Our mother screamed threats, accused me of everything, but no one believed her anymore, because the truth finally had an audience. The day she was arrested felt strangely quiet. No cheers, no relief, just the hush that comes after a storm finally passes. Louis sat beside me in the back seat of our foster parents' car, eyes red, hands trembling, whispering, "I'm sorry," over and over, like it might undo everything. But I didn't need an apology. I just needed him safe. That night, Patricia and Robert sat us down. For the first time, they didn't look like foster parents trying to hold things together. They looked like our parents, exhausted, yes, but soft in the way people get when they finally see someone clearly. Patricia took my hand and said, "We owe you an apology. We let her plant doubt in us. We failed you." And then Robert, who'd always been a little distant, his voice cracked. "You protected him when we couldn't. You stood alone even when we didn't believe you. I want you to know. I see you now. I'm proud of the man you're becoming." He called me a hero. That word hit harder than any blow my mother had ever dealt. Louis clutched my arm like he did when he was 5 and couldn't sleep. "You saved me," he whispered. And for the first time, I believed it. From there, everything changed. The home that had once felt like borrowed space slowly became ours. I was no longer just Louis's older brother, I was Robert and Patricia's son. They started including me in everything: family photos, holiday plans, even Sunday night grocery runs. They opened a college fund in my name and insisted on helping me with applications. Patricia stayed up late editing essays with me. Robert taught me how to budget for dorm life. Even Sarah, their biological daughter, who'd always kept me at arm's length, came home from college and hugged me like a brother. She told me, "You didn't ruin our family, you saved it." The counselor who intervened at the soccer game connected us to a trauma specialist. Louis started going to therapy weekly, and eventually I joined him. We talked about everything: our mom, the lies, the guilt, the fear, and slowly the nightmares stopped. The silence lifted. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were healing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just someone who came from a broken family. I was someone who built a better one. I used to think love was something you had to earn, something that came with conditions, or worse, a price tag. My mother made sure of that. "You owe me," she said, like raising me, however poorly, was some kind of loan I had to repay. But standing in my college dorm room, watching Louis rearrange my books for the 5th time, while Patricia cried and Robert slipped me emergency cash, I realized something that took me years to understand. Real love isn't transactional. It's not a debt. It's a gift. They didn't have to keep me. They didn't have to fight for me. And yet they did. Again and again. Through doubt. Through fear. Through chaos. Louis once gave me a framed photo with 7 simple words written on the back. "Thank you for giving me a childhood." But the truth is, he gave me something too. Purpose, family. A reason to believe in good again. Our mother. She taught me what love isn't. But everyone else, the family who chose me, the brother who trusted me, the community who stood beside me, showed me what love truly is. And now I get to carry that forward. Not as a victim, not as someone broken, but as someone whole. So, if you're out there wondering whether it's worth protecting someone, standing up for truth, or giving love without guarantee, let this be your answer. It always comes back. Maybe not right away. Maybe not from who you expected. But love given freely. It never goes to waste. Subscribe if you believe in chosen family.